Are you wondering how you can learn more about food? Well, you're in the right place. This is the Chakula Podcast, brought to you by the Root to Food Initiative, a show that celebrates authentic Kenyan dishes and serves you hot conversations about food in Kenya from an economic, social and political lens. Sema nasi kwenye social media at Root to Food on Instagram, at Root to Food on Twitter, and Root to Food on Facebook. And now, here's your host, Felistas Mwalia.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Chakula Podcast. Today I'm joined by my colleague and a very great friend, Emmanuel Atamba. He's a research and policy analyst of the Root to Food Initiative, which is a program under Heinrich Ball Foundation, Nairobi office. We'll be talking about the position of young people in agriculture. Karibu sana, Emmanuel.
Asante sana, Feli. Thank you for having me today.
Karibu sana. This year, there has been a lot of conversations around food systems, and there seems to be a shift from talking about agriculture value chains to the current food systems approach. How relevant is this for young people, and how does it influence the role and position of young people in food matters?
Yeah, I think the shift is very much welcome because if you look at the initial thinking around food value chains or agri-food value chains as they were called, basically is looking at value. It's almost like, this follow the money kind of approach. Mm-hmm. You look at the value along the chain and we say, okay, so there's the input provider, this is what they're bringing, this is how much it's costing, then there's the producer, and then there's someone who comes to buy from the producer and aggregates and sells at an even better price, and then there's value addition. So at the end of the day, we were just looking at how much is passed along the chain and who is pocketing that money. But if you look at the food systems approach, it's different in a way that we are looking at the activities happening and the functions. It's more about the functions than the gains you get. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the food systems thinking is more broad to a sense that we are looking at, the power issues between the producer and the consumer and other actors along the chain. And what are the specific functions that people are playing along the chain. So it's about functions rather than how much money is, gained during value addition, how much money is gained during production, what is the value of a kilo of produce, for example, from the farm, and how much will someone make if they store it for 6 months. So the food systems thinking is very much welcome. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to young people, there's really not so much difference compared the two kinds of thinking, because the young people are being told the same thing. And it's really unfair if you look at the conversations around young people, because young people are being told that because you're energetic and because you have the muscles, go and farm, go and dig, that is where your position is. You need to get into production because the people in production are getting older. But it's not just about age. I mean, the people in production are also not happier, so let's also look at that. Why are farmers not happy?
And do you think we have enough young people taking up production?
So definitely there is growing interest for young people to get into production. And if you want to appreciate the issues in production, is you look at the kind of value of value chains or the kind of crops or animal production or animal products that young people are getting into, and they're targeting some niche markets. The young people are now getting into, for example, organic production to target niche markets. Mm-hmm. Young people are producing with a target to market, and that is what we call agribusiness. And it's because basically as a young person, these are people in productive age. These are people who are starting young family or are looking to start young family. They are taking care of their families, their young families. Some of the young people do not even have control over land. They lease land to grow food and all that. So the kind of production that young people are getting into is almost sort of defined that it's only production for market, because there's that livelihood question coming in. There's that income question coming in. How much are they going to get from production? So young people are, interested in getting into production, but because of these kind of challenges that young people have that are very unique to young people, for example, access to land, I would not care so much about the quality and the health of soil of a piece of land that I have leased, which I'll not use next year.
Yeah.
See then the aspect of agroecosystems health is not there, because I've leased the land. I want to maximize production. You're not supposed to maximize, especially when you're doing any kind of production within a natural environment. When you maximize, you lose sustainability. You lose the ability of that natural resource to bounce back. So when they maximize production and then you're seeing too much pesticides being used, too much fertilizer being used, and nothing being done to take care of the soil, nothing being done to take care of biodiversity, nothing being done to take care of even even the welfare of animals that the young farmers will be dealing with. So because it's almost like a farming system that is almost like if you don't get money out of it, then you're doomed, because you can't get enough money to lease again land next year to buy the same inputs and all. So it looks like, yes, young people are getting into farming, but it looks like they're getting into a production system that has conditioned them as consumers of inputs. So this industrial production systems, monocultures and all that, because of course they again, at the end of the day, one of their targets is that they have to earn money from that production system. Otherwise, they don't have livelihood.
And I think the same also applies to the fact that they also need money if they're going to use, basically if they're also going to use the same route of approach, basically industrial agriculture, they'll still need more money to start up the whole process. Definitely.
If you walk around and you go to this you visit these farmers who have, some of this mixture of crops in their farms, and they have perennial crops and they have some short-term crops, like someone who has bananas on their farms. For you to establish banana crop on your farm, it has to be your farm, because it will take you time. And you look at the importance of having a few banana trees on your farm. It's basically they will provide shade during a very hot season. You can be able to grow a few sukuma wikis and a few other plants that might not be able to withstand very direct, harsh, sunlight. So basically, this system of incorporating or diversifying different crops builds that resilience. But young people do not have that comfort. Yeah? Because most of the young people, almost 80% of young people who are already into production are not owning the land they are working. So you're working on a piece of land that you don't own. So you do not have the privileges to build these systems. You do not have the privilege, for example, to invest in building soil water holding capacity for your soil. You can't use, if you invest so much money bringing in mulch, for example, to use mulching as a way of conserving moisture on your farm, you might not be able to get it back because the person owning the land might say tomorrow you're not there. So that's why you're seeing young people running around with the drip irrigation kits. All the farmers are not looking for drip irrigation kits. They're using mulching. They're using manure to maintain moisture in the soil, to build the health of the soil so that they can be able to maintain moisture. Even soil fertility. If you do not have long-term ownership or access or control over a piece of land, like 10 years, it becomes very expensive for you to invest in putting manure on that piece of land. And that is where now the fix is. Yes, young people are interested in production. Getting into agricultural production is not failure. There is a lot of value that you can get out of that. Even in terms of incomes, you can earn out of producing food. It's clear we know that. But under what conditions? That is where the question is. So basically, production is a thing, and there's space for people to get into production. Not only young people, but everyone. There's really a huge opportunity to get into production, and especially when the issue of quality of food becomes an issue, and everyone is looking at food they can ascertain the source, food they can agree with how it was grown and all that. The space is even bigger, because we are not looking at tomatoes as tomatoes today. We are looking at tomatoes as not only a source of nutrition, but also as a risk of health reasons as a result of how it was grown. So if you are growing tomatoes today and you're growing organic tomatoes, of course they are different from tomatoes that have been grown conventionally. You might also be doing conventionally, but you also have checks and balances to ensure that the safety of the consumer is guaranteed. And that is where you see now the market being structured in a different way to appreciate the extra effort that is taken by food producers.
Emmanuel, you've mentioned the fact that it's really a challenge for young people to get into production due to access of land. Do we have any other challenges that young people face when it comes to production or in agriculture in general?
Yeah, there are a lot of challenges, but it's not only challenges. I will also want to talk about later, the unique position of young people and the unique strengths that young people have when it comes to their role in food systems in general, but also their role in production. But for example, with the issue of land is the basic unit of production. Without land, you cannot produce anything. We are now talking about biointensive food production systems, where you are really trying to use a small piece of land in a very efficient way, in a very environmentally friendly way, to maximize whatever you want to get out of it. Because basically, if you bring in a lot of crop diversification and a lot of, you balance the seasons and all that, you have a all year cycle, things like that, you are able to produce a lot with a small small piece of land. But I don't think that should be the constraint in the first place. And it comes from a lot from cultural, setup. That for you to get land, you have to get it through inheritance. And it becomes very challenging because increasingly, especially from the middle class downwards, people have very small pieces of land. And therefore, there's no enough land to share between, for example, a father and a son. So you will have to wait for the father to leave the land for you to be able to use it. So and you see all these conversations around land subdivision and land inheritance. They're different. For example, I'm talking about the cultural setup, and now even more difficult for young women, for example, to access land, because in most cultures the land is passed down from the fathers to the sons. So if a young woman, for example, is interested in production, my daughter is so much interested in getting into production, then it becomes even more difficult for young women, especially in the current generation, to be able to accept. We hope that in future it will become easier. But then again, the idea is not that you subdivide land for everyone. I mean, if you have a number of children and some of them are not interested in production, they should not, for example, be considered to be given land. Why would you be given land that you live idle in the village, and maybe you are in IT, you are in media, you are not interested totally in getting into production? So can we have a radical thinking to make sure that we have the young people who are interested in production accessing land, not owning, just accessing land over a long period of time, so that they can sustainably be able to integrate whatever we are talking about in terms of sustainable farming methods. Of course, the land becomes a big issue, but then now it carries with it a lot of the other challenges. For example, your ability to apply innovation now becomes a problem, because the land you're using, maybe you have no control over. You have it for a season, and therefore putting in resources to innovatively use the land becomes a problem. The other challenges that young people face, of course, are the same challenges that older farmers face. Access to information, access to knowledge. Government support is not there. Some of the policies that you see around are not really favoring producers. And here you see a lot of public funding going into inputs. And these inputs are not necessarily the only inputs that can be used. So if you are using billions to fund chemical fertilizers, for example, it doesn't make a lot of sense to someone who wants to grow a crop that doesn't require fertilizer. Or someone who has soil that doesn't require more fertilizer used. Maybe that person requires labor, or maybe that person needs another form of support. Be it market linkages, be it access to technology so that they can be able to market and interact with other market linkages. So the same challenges. There's no magic that young people are going to the farm with. If a farm has failed for many years, most of the time it's not because the farmer is old. It's because there are real challenges. What we are saying, these farmers are old, these ones are younger, they will do better. That is just a perception that we have. But there are real challenges that are facing farmers in this country, and those challenges do not discriminate against old people or young people. Those challenges will affect everyone that is getting into production. So to a point that this conversation about young people getting into agriculture, you basically don't just say we need to get into. We need to change the system first, because there are a lot of challenges, there are a lot of bottlenecks, such that even if you get into farming today, you will still face the same problems.
Emmanuel, you've also mentioned the fact that we need to change our systems. Do you think the current approach, this industrial agriculture, is locking out the youth or the young people?
Yeah, in a direct way and also in an indirect way. Directly, because we are talking about farming systems that are capital intensive. A lot of the time, young people do not have access to that capital. And indirectly as well, through, of course, systems that, enslave young people. I've highlighted about that, because basically you find with our emphasis on input intensive forms of farming, you get into farming, through a loan, for example. You need a loan to get into farming, you need a loan to build a greenhouse, you need a loan to put up drip irrigation systems, you need a loan. All this intensive kind of system locks you in. So it's not that, even those who are getting into farming, the young people already getting into farming, have these challenges, because now you go to balance your books and you have to pay this loan back, and whatever you're getting from the farm is not sufficient to balance that and also to pay yourself. So you find that we get into farming and then you are locked in because of this system not being sustainable and not being able to pay sufficiently the person who is doing the production. So there's two ways. You can be locked out completely, but you can also be in, but enslaved inside that kind of system. Because getting out means you have to pay all the debt and you have to take care of your needs for you to be able to get out of that system. So there's therefore that need for young people, and they have that capacity. I talked about the young people having some unique capacities and capabilities. So you will find that basically, of course, with access to information, and a lot of young people have been able to access education, especially speaking about our generation, people have been able to access education quite different compared with the generations ahead of us. There is access to technology, there's IT access, penetration, there's power access for people who are able to access information. They can research, they can get information and know what is best practices done elsewhere. So there's that potential. And of course, being young is not only having muscles and the physical energy to do things. It's also having that sharpness of the brain and being able to think and practically, bring solutions to the table. So innovation is one of the biggest strengths of young people that no one talks about. So we look at young people as people who have enough energy to dig, but we're not looking at young people as people who can be able to innovate and come up with food and farming systems, or even design farms that are able to be sustainable and that they're able to conserve water, are able to conserve soil fertility, are able to conserve biodiversity.
I really like what you've talked about. And besides production, do you think young people have a role to play in decision making?
Of course, definitely young people have a role to play. And it's not French. I mean, we participate in these platforms, and we see some of the decisions that are being made. Of course, when you look at budgeting for agriculture, when you look at some of the programs that are being rolled out, some of them are not addressing the issues. And most of the time, it's not young people sitting on those tables. So maybe if we had young people there, then it would be different. It would be different. So definitely, young people should also be given a space in terms of policy making, in terms of coming up with ideas that can be implemented through public funding, through corporate funding, through basically, again, ideas that also generate value on the top there. So it's not just about sending young people to the farms. It's also about giving these young people a platform where they can share ideas, they can use their brains, they can use their knowledge to actively develop and to actively come up with systems that we can all benefit from. So policy making, yes, young people should be there at county level, at national level, at global level. Yeah, we need to have probably the next, Secretary General of FAO. We need to have a young person there. Could be that could change things around, because we are, of course, also looking at the future. So we cannot be implementing things to say, okay, so we are coming up with this policy to incorporate young people in agriculture. We have not involved the same young people. So all of us, not only young people, but all of us, all demographics. We're talking about age. We are talking about gender. We are talking about different communities. We are talking about different countries being at the center of that conversation. So we all need to make a decision, because all this comes back to affect us. So the kind of funding that goes into agriculture, the kind of policies we develop, the kind of legal mechanisms we build to direct and to control our food systems need to have young people having a voice there.
Even in conversations around food systems, the role of young people has come up a lot. Do you think this approach emphasizes more on the role of young people?
Yes and no, because at least at this time we are talking about asking young people what they think about the current food system, asking young people what they think about when it comes to access to food for all. So it's moving from looking at young people as labor for production and labor for value addition activities, or just brains to invent how to move tomatoes from a village to a city. So it changes a bit, but the no part of it is that still the same young people are not asked to take those important positions to decide on how we move forward in our food systems. So we have a lot of conversations both offline and online, and I think to appreciate a lot, there are a lot of conversations also online, basically on social media, and young people being encouraged to speak up and talk about food systems. But we are talking about food systems, but at the end of the day, we are not at the final decision-making table. So that is also problematic in a sense that we are still trying to see, okay, so what is there for young people to take? What role can young people play? But not to give young people that space where they can make a decision and they can make they can influence the decision-making process.
Yeah, Emmanuel, to take you back, we definitely have some young people at the top. Don't you think they're doing enough when it comes to decision-making and basically championing for good policies?
There are trials. For example, I think we have a young person in the position of Chief Administrative Secretary, and she has been out there talking about kitchen gardening and the importance of kitchen gardening, and something that I really love, because kitchen gardens for me is a form of power and control, really, beyond even the production that you see there. So, and it's interesting to see a bit of action now coming from the Ministry of Agriculture because of the position of this young person, and we need to see more young people there, because the other day they were launching now 4K clubs, which I think I definitely believe that she had influence probably on some of these conversations and policies. But like now with the idea of the gardens and the 4K clubs, are they funded? I don't think so, because the last time I checked, the government was trying to see if there could be private sector support, there could be civil society organizations to come in and fund the 4K clubs. So there are interesting ideas that come. Basically, what we need to appreciate is that young people are a powerhouse in terms of coming up with ideas. That young people are a source of innovation. Young people are a source of great ideas that can move our society forward in all spheres. So we need to see, we definitely need to see more young people in those positions. And not only young people, I think we also need to start looking at, of course, if you're talking about agriculture and food systems, we need to start saying, okay, so who is in that ministry? And are they able to articulate the issues? Are they able to understand the issues? Because that is where the problem is. We can have as many young people energized on the ground, energized at the lower levels, energized and grouping themselves and working very hard to say we want to end the problem of hunger and malnutrition in this country. But if we do not have a proper system, leadership, structure at the top of the ministry, or even nationally, we are going to elections in 2022. Those are the questions we need to be asking. The people who are going to form government in the next, do they understand the food and nutrition security issues? Do they understand the issues that farmers are going through? Do they understand the issues that are affecting people who are doing value addition, or people who are doing seeds, producing seeds that we use to grow our food? If we have that system from the top downwards, appreciating the issues and being able to address the issues, then we will move forward. But it doesn't matter how many young people are actively engaged in production. That is not the question. The question is these young people with all the ideas, with all the innovation, with all the energy, being at the top and making those decisions. So I think yes, I think we are seeing a bit of progress. I think not only in the Ministry of Agriculture, we have seen, I think the president appointed quite a number of young people in the cabinet, but not necessarily cabinet, but in the top ministry positions. But I think it's not enough. It's not enough because compared with the number of people who are not young people, and not because again they say being young is in the heart. So we might be talking about young people, but not necessarily in terms of age. But we are looking at people who will actively champion policies that favor young people. Whether you're 90-year-old but you feel young and you are looking at, okay, so how can we work with young people? How can we work with school kids to get them to understand issues about food systems? So youth in the form of being able to actively champion for issues that are affecting young people. I think it's very important to have that at the top.
And I think we should also look at the aspect of young people who champion for sustainable practices. Yeah,
definitely, because it's not just about food production for today. It's also about how do we sustain the same systems that feed us. I like to believe always that farming is not about producing food, but farming is taking care of the farm. That is why it's called farming. It's not called fooding. If it was about producing food, it will call it something else. But it's called farming because it's the art of maintaining and sustaining a farm. If I have a farm, 1 acre piece of land, and I produce tomatoes worth $1 million shillings this year, and someone visits the same farm 3 years to come, and I have run down the farm, the farm is not managed, everything is, just all over the place and all that, I will not be a good farmer because I produced 10 tons of tomatoes last year. No. I'm a good farmer because the farm is still there this year. I'm a good farmer because the farm I'm working on will still be there 10 years to come. So the question of young people involving themselves in food production and in agriculture and in food systems, in general, should really also emphasize on the issues of sustainability. Not to say, with this basic conversation that, young people are going to be there tomorrow, so they will see the effect. No, I think that's not the point. The point is that we appreciate more the effects of today than any other generation. We appreciate more, we will face more, of course, the challenges that with the things we are doing now and the current approach now, we will see them more than any other people. And just to also use the energy that is there for innovation and building sustainable systems. So it's very important to look at it that way. And of course, the other aspects of food systems in general and diets and connecting production and eating patterns. It's very important for young people to get into those conversations. I'm not seeing young people emphasizing, for example, on recipes and things like that. Today we are, of course, moving towards a more what we're calling a global village and moving towards a more easy kind of service sector because it's easier to get food today. And we are not seeing a lot of young people saying, okay, so I got this pumpkin from Felicitas and I'm going to eat it today. And I think that is where we need to get the conversation because we also need to consume our own products.
Yeah.
So if I am growing pumpkins and you're not eating them, we will eat them. Yeah. If you're growing bananas and no one is eating, none of your friends is cooking bananas, we will eat those bananas.
So I believe from what you're saying is that young people have a role to play when it comes to basically championing for sustainable food systems besides the production level and production level, policy level.
Sustainable diets is definitely part of that sustainable food systems conversation. You cannot have sustainable food systems if we don't have sustainable diets. It's almost like saying you're producing something that people are not eating.
Yeah.
You will stop producing because you can't sustain that. So it's very important that we look at this beyond that. And also to just say, it shouldn't be an excuse that there are so many opportunities in agriculture or in food systems that we do not create jobs for young people. If I'm not interested in production, I really also deserve to have an opportunity to work in another sector. Yeah. If I'm interested in the IT sector, we really need to still continue to create conducive environments for young people who are interested in other sectors. I find it very funny that we have, now a lot of excuses coming from government. When you talk about unemployment, then people say, but young people can get into production. That young people should get into farming because there are opportunities in farming. That's not the point. Going into farming should be a choice. It should not be a last resort. It should be a choice. If you are interested about farming, then we facilitate you to get into production. If you do not have access to land, what mechanisms are there in place by the government to ensure that young people have access to land, be it on a lease kind of model, be it on a permanent basis, but we need to be able to move beyond those barriers to make sure that the young people who are interested in production have access to land, so that we don't have a society where the people who have land are not interested in production and the people who are interested in production do not have land.
Emmanuel, still on the production conversation, there have been a lot of conversations on the average age of a farmer that a farmer is supposed to be like 60-year-old and that farming is not for young people. How do we change this narrative?
So that conversation definitely has to change because I don't see a problem with a farmer who is 60-year-old. Because if that is the farmer who is patient with the crop, if that is the farmer who can wait for a banana for a whole year to sell it, then so be it. If that is the farmer who is patient with the cows and that is the farmer who looks after the chicks and makes sure that at the end of the day they have something to take to the market, then that is a system we cannot fight. That is just how it is. The thing is we need to change the face of farming so that it encompasses, it brings on board the unique strengths of young people. Farming systems that can maximize on innovation. Farming systems that can maximize, of course, on productivity, on labor productivity that the young people have. So if we are looking at monocultures that require you to have mechanization, you use tractors and you plant with tractors, and then you sit there and wait for 6 months to harvest the maize, then that will not be maximizing on the capabilities of young people. So we need to change that. But of course, there are a lot of buzzwords that are around, or just people throwing around a lot of perception and personal opinions that young people are not interested in production. That's not fair. And I think young people should get to a point where we do not entertain those conversations. That someone can come out of nowhere and say that young people are not interested in production because they don't want to get dirty. I always find that disturbing. Yeah. Because we farm. I farm myself, so I'm not talking about this. It's not Greek. I farm myself, and I have my own kitchen garden. So I'm not afraid of getting dirty. I don't think there's any young person who is afraid of touching soil. Yeah. I have never seen any young person afraid of touching soil. The problem is that the soil is not there to be touched. How do you touch soil from a bedsitter in Nairobi? How much land do you have around your house in Nairobi? You do not have access. You do not have any alternative place where you can go and farm. So we need to create those systems for young people to enjoy and to also participate effectively in production, but not to blame young people. I think the problem that is there is that there's a lot of blame game, that young people are not doing this because they are like this. Young people are, because this generation is I don't know, the microwave generation. We don't want to farm and we don't want to do.
But how do we change all of that?
It's young people to say no. This is not speaking about us. It's for young people to take it up to themselves to say no. Yeah, no, Bwana Minister, no. That what you have said is not depicting our position as young people. So no, what you are saying is not the true position, because we have these examples of young people who are doing very well in this sector. How do you generalize and say that young people can't do this or young people do not want to do this? So because if we move away from that, then you will see the change. Then you will see young people coming out actively to take up positions and to influence this sector in the right direction.
Thank you so much for your insights, Emmanuel. I've actually picked so much from this conversation. And as we finish, what do we need to do going forward?
I think we need to move from the image problems that we have and address the real problems affecting our food system. We need to move from the blame game and really embrace each other and see the role that every one of us plays in our food system. Today, I'm not advocating for young people because they need the space. I'm advocating for young people because we need more young people to take up active roles in food systems. But everyone needs young people. It's not that we are doing it as a favor to young people, because there's a specific contribution that we are missing from young people. And I think as well. So basically, going forward, we need to also have young people demanding to be given spaces in what we call high places. We need to have young people demanding for spaces in policy conversations, in policy decisions, demanding to have audience and demanding to have positions where they can also make an impact, because we cannot wait for tomorrow to make the change, because the problems of tomorrow are starting today. So we cannot sit to wait for the problems to start today so that we solve them tomorrow, because we are always told that young people are leaders of tomorrow. And of course, beyond production, I think young people have a very important role to also shape the future of our diets and the future of our food systems through voting by their votes and deciding to support food systems that are sustainable, and actively also encouraging basically food production systems that are sustainable to the environment and fair for everyone, and encouraging equal access to food. And we need to decommodify food in the process, because basically young people can decide today that sharing food is a thing today. We have a generation that doesn't think that sharing food is a thing, and you have avocados, and when they overripe and you throw them, and your neighbor doesn't have a problem eating avocados. So we need to get to a point where we can actually agree that we are changing the way we are looking at food, and we are changing the way we are producing our food, and we are changing the way we are interacting with our food, and those things can be done by the young people. So it's not just about going into production, but also looking at what other areas require our forces and our masses, because we are the biggest demographic in the world.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for joining us today. And thank you to our listeners for listening till the end of the show. Chakula Podcast is a show that comes to you every Friday. Make sure to follow us on SoundCloud at Chakula Podcast. And we're also available at Apple Podcasts at Chakula Podcast. Subscribe, like, share, comment, and follow us. Thank you so much. Until next time. Bye-bye.